Okay. So we'll just talk about your upcoming fight for Shamrock FC. You're in the main event of Shamrock FC 354 coming up May 10th versus Max Churyov. I guess the first question will be, what are your thoughts on Max Churyov as an opponent and how you two match up together?
Um, I haven't seen much on him. I studied his film.
Mm.
Um, the film on which I studied, he's fighting caliber of fighters that you can't really see what he's capable of so much as like the dog in him. You know what I mean? He's fighting fighters, that are scared to be in there with him. Um, but he looks well rounded. He looks like he's got a good ground game. Looks like he's got takedowns that are sharp. Um, looks like he's got good pressure on the feet. Um, so we're just seeing him with those opponents. I feel like it should make out to a good main event.
Okay. Um, any intangibles or skill set wise you can break down where you feel like maybe you hold the advantage or places you have to watch out for him specifically as far as actual skills?
So far as the skill set, I feel like the pressure I bring is going to be way different than anything he's ever used to. My pressure walking forward, not giving a lot of ground, um, being able to punch while being punched. Um, that's going to be a big factor for him to get over with me. Um, being able to um, decipher game plans. I do a very good job of learning somebody within the first 2 minutes and then being able to just start picking, bing, 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 bing. Um, so that'll be that'll be a hardship that that'll be a hard mountain for him to climb. So far as him, he's got a good orthodox and unorthodox stance. He likes to switch that back and forth. It looks like he plays with that a lot. I think he's normally orthodox from the fights I've seen. When he gets hurt, he goes back to just that regular orthodox stance. But the fact that he can play in southpaw a little bit, that's a good advantage for him. It keeps me having to stay on my toes, and it keeps my mind having to work. So if he could use that to his advantage, he might do all right. But he'll never make it out of there alive.
What's your prediction for this one? How you see? What are you calling?
I'm calling the W. I'm always fighters always going there to get to finish. And I'm no different. You know what I mean? I'm going in there obviously to put him away. I would think he's going in there to put me away. So with that type of mindset for this fight, and based on both of our skill sets, you know, I'm seeing me getting a finish. Late in the second, maybe early in the third.
Okay. What's preparation been like for this one? How has camp been? Where and who are you training with? Some key training partners.
Camp's been good, man. Camp's been real strong. Um, a lot of aerobic exercises, because before this, my last two to three fights, I was fighting at 185. I walk around kind of big, about 206. So I had to shrink it down a little bit, take off the weights a little bit, um, do a lot of body weight lifting. But it's made my cardio strong. It's made me incredibly fast. I've gotten to train down there at New Mexico with Jackson Wink down there in Albuquerque. One of the most renowned gyms in the world. So it's been it's been great. They got a lot of great fighters from all over the world out there. Chechnya wrestlers, strikers from Thailand. They got it all. Um, I got to go down there and get a great camp in. Not to mention that the elevation out there is incredible. You know what I mean? You go down there for the first day and you're suffocating. So getting able to be acclimated to that, I feel like it's made my cardio insane. My lungs have felt like they've grown, a half inch. You know what I mean? So I got depth. Um, I mean, it's just all around training has been almost perfect.
Okay. How did you end up at Jackson Winks with those guys, or how'd you link up with those guys?
I actually hooked up with them about 6 years ago. Um, they got a program in which you have to send video in and kind of get accepted to be able to come to their gym. You know, they don't want a lot of people in the gym that's not at caliber, you know. So I'll send in some video of my amateur records, and they hit me with the back like, yeah, you're eligible for the pro program, so come on down. And that's when I was still an amateur, you know. So I got to train with people like Carlos Condit, Mike Perry, Cowboy Cerrone, um, John Dodson, you know, any name you can think of, you know what I'm saying, that was down there, and we was, you know, getting to compete. So I got a real good I got a real good foot in the game when I was turning into pro, you know what I'm saying? I got a real good aspect of what it was going to be like from some top level guys. So ever since then, you know, I've been going back there back and forth, you know. I've been anytime I have a camp, boom, I go ahead and shoot down there for 2 weeks, you know, get some real good elevation in, come back here and, you know, just kind of maintain that lung pressure and that stability.
Okay, okay, nice. And then you mentioned that that sometimes you fight at 185 and this is at 170. What's your optimal weight class, or what do you feel you perform best at?
I feel like I perform best, great at both weight classes. You know, it's just different attributes. You know, with 170, I have to train a lot different than I do for 185. Like I said, obviously I'm coming down from over 200 pounds. So you know, there's a different approach I have to take to training camp than I do at 185. You know, at 185, I'm still able to be comfortable enough to lift those few days during the week, keep that big power up. Then that's the thing with the 185ers. As long as you keep that power up, my speed is just too quick for him anyway. So as long as my punching power puts him in the ground, then you know I like to keep that lifting going on. But with 170, it's just a little more honed in on your diet. You know, you got to tighten up the reins. You can't be so loose goose. You got to um, be comfortable with the fact that sometimes you're gonna be hungry, you know, which I feel like that brings out a different mentality and a different dog in you. You know what I'm saying? If you know, like, hey, I gotta hit this training thing. I know I'm gonna be starving, but yo, I know that my muscles ain't gonna have as much carbs to burn on this training session, but yo, I need to make it through. I need to keep pushing. So it brings out, you know, it really shows you, you know, what kind of mindset you have. And so I really like it. Even the cut, I like going to 170 just because that cut is a tough cut. You know, you got 2 or 3 days of a horrible cut, but you get to sit in your mind, you get to develop and be like, okay, this is where we're at. All right, yeah, this is what I'm going to do in the fight. This is where I get to maintain. Because the biggest fight to me is the weight cut. You know what I mean? As long as you make it in the weight cut, I mean, we as MMA fighters, we fight every day. We do sparring, we do, you know, drilling. We already know how to do this. As long as we get the weight down, you should go in there and have a ball of a time.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense. You coming off the two wins, 2 fight win streak. Before that, you had a few losses and you were in the UFC. I guess touch a little bit on the time in the UFC, um, and what it takes for you, I guess, for you to get back there and get back to where you belong.
Yeah. Um, we competed in the UFC. 2022 was our first go around into the UFC, and they caught us on 3 days' notice for a 170 fight. Like I told you, I walk around pretty heavy, so that 3 days' notice for a 170 was, and I mean, you know, you had to really find it. But you know, at that point, when the UFC calls, you don't hang up the phone and say, "Nah, I'll catch you later." You know what I mean? You grab the opportunity, you say, "Let's go." I was 5-0 at the time with 5 finishes. Um, I do think, you know, I could have elongated my career before I stepped into UFC. Um, but I had a management team that really wanted to get me in there, you know, really wanted to get me started. And, you know, I'm thankful for that, you know, the eagerness of them, you know, really wanting to get me out there. I'm loving that, you know what I mean? I could have I could have got a few more big fights to put me in the right headspace, you know. But it called and I went up and I performed greatly against Brian Barberena was the first fight. Um, I performed greatly, no nerves, walking to the cage. Um, it was kind of like walking into destiny, and I performed greatly, got in there, bang, 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 banged it out with them. The one thing I did lack at that fight was that that hunger to kill. I kind of stayed in there and I kind of knew I was punching him up a lot. So, and I took him down 3 times. So in my mind, I went on autopilot and I said, all right, bet we got the win for the first UFC fight. We can coast this to a decision. And unfortunately, when you do that, the judges have a different mindset than you. So they gave Brian Barberena the decision over me. Then I fought the next guy coming up was Ian Gary. And that's a guy who, that was my first time fighting in an arena with 40,000 fans. I let that hype get to me. I let some of my pregame rituals that I didn't get to do get to me. Because in the fight, I really didn't feel like he had any ability to touch me. He couldn't get a game plan off. He didn't want to stay in there and bang. And I just missed the mark of executing and throwing, everything I got. And then, my last fight, same way as the Brian Barberena fight. I'm touching him up, taking him down, cracking him, dropped him one time with a left hook, thinking, yo, I got it in the bag, you know what I'm saying? But you got to have that killer mentality. That killer mentality is something that not only saves you from being with the judges, but also something that the judges see. They see like, oh my gosh, this man's trying to finish the fight. This man is trying to, clobber this guy, I guess, and I can feel, when people are kind of coasting, you can feel when people are kind of staying in there just because, okay, bet I'm 1 point up or 2 point up, you know what I mean? So I had to getting out of that with those 3 losses. They were very, very competitive. I'm very confident I can beat anybody in the UFC. You know what I mean? Like I said, I had a fight against Ian Gary. I gave him one of his best fights, and this man is number 12 now in the UFC. You know what I mean? Like, I could have squashed him. And that's crazy for me to have let the ball drop on that one, because I could be in a whole different light right now. You know, um, but those things happen. Um, got cut shortly after that from the UFC, which no blame on them. You know what I mean? If you don't produce, they're gonna have to move on. You know what I mean? It's not their fault; it's my fault. So I took some time to understand that and re-engage myself, and I took a boxing match right after that. Lost to a crazy majority decision, which Buddy was dead on his feet. So that was crazy that they did that to me. But in boxing, it's a whole different game. You know what I mean? In boxing, it's a whole different animal. Um, when you're in somebody's backyard and if you don't finish them, they're gonna get the dub. You know what I'm saying? Boxing is that steep on who they want to win. Um, so I really took it down to myself and had to really focus and understand like, yo, you got to go in there with a kill or be killed again, get that old you back in there. So I fought, B2, killed Buddy. Killed him from bell to bell. Then I fought 12-5, what was his name? Chris Crosby, who was supposed to be a crazy jujitsu artist. So I just put that pressure on him and, punched him out. So it gave me that awakening again, it gave me, like, yeah, this is, it's easy. It's easy to us. We switched some game plans up. I switched some striking coaches up. And I'm real confident about that. So going in, these 3 losses mean nothing. All they is a prequel of what I should have did and what's to come. You know what I mean? It shows you, anybody who gets a situation and experiences something and then gets to go back will never do that situation over again the same way. You know what I mean? So I'm glad I got that experience. I got the taste of what I needed to do, of how I need to be, inform myself when I get in there. So the next time we go to the UFC, which will be soon, hopefully sooner than later. Hopefully Dana White's in the building, you heard, and then I could put the young man out and then show Dana White, and get me back to where I belong.
Yeah. One thing I like about this matchup between you and Churiev is y'all have similar trajectories. He's 4-0, 5-0, as you were a few years ago before you went to the UFC. And he's looking, like you say, to get to that UFC and get to where you've been. You've had that experience, and now you're back looking to get back to the UFC. And y'all meeting on the regional scene, which a lot of times, like you said, people avoid these type of big fights before they get to the UFC. I feel like this is a matchup you can see a few years. We could have saw 2 years, even next year, tomorrow or May 10th when they have it, you versus Churiev on a prelim card. So I feel like that's what
Yeah.
makes this main event exciting. It's like, okay, two prospects or two guys that's streaking towards the UFC, meeting early. I mean, it makes it exciting. Do you think your experience in the UFC gives you an advantage, or your more career experience?
Maybe the more career experience, you know what I mean? Maybe slightly being in the UFC gives me uh kind of an edge advantage, you know what I'm saying? Kind of knowing what it takes, knowing what they got to offer. Um, but I think mostly just experience, you know what I mean? Along with the 7-3 record of professional. I mean, I'm 16-2 in amateurs, you know what I'm saying? Like I've been through it all, I done traveled the country. I done fought in Australia, I done fought in um Saudi Arabia, you know what I mean? Like I done fought in Bahrain, like I've been on the travel. I've been where, uncomfortable situations and you have to compete and you have to find it. So and I've never been finished. You know what I mean? There ain't a soul out here that's ever put me in the ground. You know what I mean? So it's that alone, um, I think invites a new crowd of problems for him. He's going up against somebody who's not scared of fire. You know what I'm saying? I get burned a little bit. I'm like, bring it on. You know what I'm saying? And I'm throwing right back. So it's it's really it's really for him the biggest test of his career. You know what I'm saying? Um, and for me, it's just another person in the way for me to finish so that I can get back to where I was supposed to be in the first place. Um, and his journey will come too. You know what I'm saying? I see him out here dedicated, and he'll make that UFC level too. But this ain't the fight where he makes that.
Okay. Couple more questions. I know that you're a person that balances the family life. You got the family, the wife, and all that training. How's it been balancing that? And just as you become a professional and, like say, reach other goals, how's it been balancing all the family life with training?
It's been pretty good, pretty easy. We got ourselves in a real nice groove. You know what I mean? Especially when we got into the UFC. We had to kind of find a pocket of, yo, when is it time for this and when is it time for that? You know what I'm saying? When is it time to chill out? When is it time to, hey, I got to get to work. And it makes it better that I own my own business. So training for me is at the touch of a button. You know what I mean? If I gotta go, I gotta go. You know what I mean? So I come in, I come out. So we've really meshed it real well with how to do my career. I think even better than we've ever had it before. So I think that's what makes it so much easier for my camps now. You know what I mean? My camps go so much more smooth. We schedule out what we need to do throughout the week. We schedule out, if I'm gonna go travel, we schedule money to put that aside and like boom, so we have all that paid off and we don't have to incur different debt that brings on more stress. We just know we hitting on all cylinders. So it's been perfect almost.
Okay. Okay. Why should the Shamrock FC fans and the Darian Week fans make sure they catch this matchup between you and Max Churio?
They should catch the matchup because Max Churyov is an athletic and a strong prospect. And I'm going to show this regional scene how much more dominant I am than anybody on this regional scene. Like big ups and no disrespect to Max at all, but it's going to be levels to it when we get in there. He's going to come aggressive, and then he's just going to find out that aggression is just not good enough. He's going to come with all his strength, and he's going to find out he's just not strong enough. And with that being said, I'm going to put on a good show. I'm going to make a great performance, and they're going to see like put this man back where he belongs. Get this big fish out of this little pond, boy. We out here drowning. So it's going to be good.
Nice. Any final message or final thing you want to say?
Yeah, I do want to say all glory be to God. in Jesus Christ, my Lord and Savior. Without him, none of this will ever be possible. And I'm not talking about just my career. I'm talking about life in general. So I always like to give blessings to him. And I always like to say, appreciate every fan out there that tunes in. Thank you, Shamrock FC, for inviting me and putting me on the card. I really appreciate you guys. And let's make a good night on May 10th. Let's have a blast.
Nice. So I'm gonna stop recording. Stop.